Welcome to the VegasInsider.com Bet and Collect podcast.
I'm here to collect.
Hosted by Kevin Rogers.
Who's the big winner here tonight at the casino?
Your source for the best sports betting information to help you dominate your bookmaker.
Thought you was laying.
I'm laying. No, I'm taking it. I was taking it.
It's time to bet and collect.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Bet and Collect podcast here on VegasInsider.com for Friday, May the 15th. Kevin Rogers and Tony Mejia with you as we will take a look at the AFC today in the NFL, as we're still assuming their season will begin on time, and we'll go through the divisions, some of our best bets, and also, the big story, which we'll begin with, Tony, at least coming out for Major League Baseball, still waiting to see if the owners and the players are going to come to an agreement on a shortened season, likely 82 games, and the key is that, the players want to feel safe, but yet they want to get paid. The owners have laid out what they want. And on Thursday, Blake Snell of the Tampa Bay Rays, who won a Cy Young 2 years ago, so he's not a nobody, he came out and unfortunately kind of fumbled things a little bit, in which he said that he wanted to get paid or he's not going to play. And then he kind of went into want to make sure that we're safe from the COVID-19. But when you drop the money thing immediately, it doesn't have a good look. First of all, Tony, I understand where he's coming from, so I'm not going to totally fault him, but at the same time, it just isn't a good look when we're trying to get something started, and the first complaint is about money.
Somebody was going to be the bad guy, and it's clear Blake Snell volunteered to do so. Double pay cut is what these players are really up in arms about, and I can't blame them. They're already getting a schedule that their pay will be prorated for, half the season. And at this point, it's all bargaining, and Blake Snell fired off the first shot.
I guess my issue is past the money, because it's easy to say, stop complaining about money. If you don't want to play because you're afraid of the coronavirus or because you're not paid fairly, that's fine. You don't have to play and just say, I'm going to sit out this season and wait it out until 2021. There will be someone else that will take your place. And listen, this is not exactly a situation that anybody is happy about. The owners aren't happy. There's no fans, or there will be no fans likely. The players aren't happy that their pay is getting cut dramatically, but also they're playing only half the games. They're going to have much less travel, apparently. They're not going to be going across the country. So I'm going from the selfish standpoint of I want to see Major League Baseball back. I think that this is a situation, Tony, out of the four major sports, Major League Baseball has the most to lose out of anyone. That when you look at the other three sports, NBA and NHL, if they don't continue, we understand, at least this season, You don't have the playoffs in NBA or NHL. You played most of the season. There's a lot of stuff they got to go through to get this fixed, to get the playoffs going. I understand. The NFL always finds a way to fall, not ass backwards into something, but they always have months in between, or they just have the Super Bowl, then the coronavirus hits, and they're able to have the draft virtually, and now they have months to prepare for the season. So the NFL should be fine, but Major League Baseball, though, because the season should have started already, and they're almost a month and a half in with nothing and no end game at all, that Major League Baseball, I would hope, would try to get the season in and then start again new next year.
Yeah, the NFL's been Teflon throughout all this, and baseball really has to make the right decision, because it could be the precipice of something dramatically different for baseball that improves it. I think if we do get an 82-game season, the importance of every game obviously is going to be a motivating factor for people to watch. So, this could be a really good thing for baseball. It just has to get its act together.
Now, what do you think happens if they all scrap it? If the players say no and the owners say, fine, you don't want to play, then you don't have to play, and there is no season. What do you think happens moving forward with baseball?
They're going to lose a lot of public trust. I don't foresee a situation where that happens. There's too many people that want to play. Minor league baseball is going to be compromised this season. So I think you end up with 30-man, maybe 40-man rosters where all these players are going to end up going out there and being a team's nine every given day for when baseball finally gets it going.
Now, with the NBA, that we saw the comments from Adam Silver, the commissioner, that will give you an update on the update. In 2 to 4 weeks, we'll have a plan, and it's been talked about Vegas or Orlando. There's different places they could play. Now, I'm sure a lot of the NBA players want to finish this season because they've come so far already. Now, you've covered the NBA for a very long time, not only for VegasInsider, but also other outlets. So you have a lot more insight on this. That A, if they continue, do you think they bag the rest of the regular season and go straight to the playoffs?
I do. I think at this point it minimizes risk to have non-playoff teams sit the rest of the season out. And a lot of those teams are going to really hate that decision. But I think as we progress to where this decision is going to be made, likely at the beginning of June, teams 17 through 30 in the NBA will probably be told to sit at home.
Because, I mean, we heard Steve Kerr, the coach of the Warriors, come out and say, like, we're done. Right. You know, if this thing is hitting, like, there's no reason for Golden State to continue. There's no reason for the Knicks to continue. There's so many teams. And granted, New Orleans and San Antonio and Portland, that those are teams that want to try to finish, they can get in the playoffs. And I know it doesn't sound good that teams like Golden State and Cleveland and Chicago and New York all want to quit because they're out of it. But, you know, you're just really playing for money at that point, which I can't blame you on, but just all the logistics. And, I mean, it sucks if you can't have a closure to the season because of what the Lakers have done with LeBron, see what Giannis and the Bucks can do, see what the Clippers can do. But at the same time, it just seems like there's such a mad scramble here that we're a lot more understanding if they can't come to a conclusion on this.
We would be, but I think we're just going to have to see what these next 2 weeks bring. And all these states restarting, will we see a dramatic fallout from those decisions that are being made at a very high level that will make it a moot point and sports won't be able to continue? Or will we get through things where all these spikes are decreasing and we can reasonably, without fans, get these games going again? I think it'd be best for all parties if we got a little NBA in the summer and Major League Baseball as well.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And Gary Bettman, the commissioner of the NHL, has said that they're not ready to postpone things. I think they're all working 24/7 to figure this thing out, to go to different states, to go wherever, to get their seasons concluded. So at least you have some kind of finality to it. Now, as far as the NFL goes, before we get to the odds, I found it interesting, too, that Joe Buck, the lead voice for the NFL and Major League Baseball on Fox, who sometimes gets a bad rap. I think Joe Buck is terrific, and a lot of people, you know, there's mixed feelings on him. But he came out and he said that Fox was already planning, and I'm not sure if CBS was doing it, too, to have fake crowd noise pumped in because you're not going to have fans, which – again, my view is get these games going. Whenever the fans come, they come, because you know what? Everyone is going to watch on TV. So however you have to manipulate it, manipulate it.
No, I'm in total agreement. And I think we'll get that not just from the networks, we'll get that from the stadiums themselves where you'll pipe in crowd noise, which will probably give the home team at least some advantage given a road atmosphere that isn't going to be existing.
What do you think about this college football thing before we get to the NFL odds and the AFC today? What do you think about this college football thing? Because we've heard so many different opinions on when it's going to start, which teams can start. It came out this week that a lot of universities in California, not including UCLA and USC, but a lot of the other state schools, that they will go online. So that includes out of the Mountain West, Fresno State, San Diego State, and San Jose State, and how that could affect those football programs if they don't have kids in school or at least on campus. What would that mean for football? And again, the Pac-12, they haven't come out and made any decisions. I mean, Stanford's also in that mix, but Stanford's a private school, USC is a private school, so you know they're going to do whatever they want to do. But at the same time, I just think that people say we're a few months out, why are you making decisions now? But also, they can't wait till August to make a decision either. This isn't like a lockout where they could just turn it on and everybody comes back.
When again mid-July rolls around, the decision has already will have to be made, and we could see outside the box thinking where a lot of these conferences won't have all their members playing, but forms an alliance just for this season to get the teams that want to be out there. And again, that's going to come down to the decisions of presidents, and they'll probably vary by school to school.
And we saw Gordon G., the athletic director or president at West Virginia, that because he was at Ohio State before,
right.
And he said we're going to play. And you have some presidents that are saying we're playing. Others like no, we're not playing, or we're not having kids back, and it's just it's crazy right now. So let's look at some odds for the AFC, and we'll go over that this week, and then we'll look at the NFC next week. But as far as the four divisions go, and you have two clear-cut favorites for their division titles, that being the Chiefs in the AFC West and the Ravens in the AFC North. I guess first things first with those two, I guess it's kind of hard, Tony, right now to make any kind of argument against the Chiefs winning the West, just because the Broncos, Chargers, and Raiders are way behind Kansas City, and they just won the Super Bowl. And Baltimore, coming off of a fantastic season last year, got bounced in the second round by Tennessee. But it's hard to think Cleveland makes that huge of a jump. Pittsburgh, they didn't have a lot of offense last year, and we'll see what Big Ben has left in the tank this year. But is there any way you can see going against the Ravens and Chiefs as division winners?
No, I think both of those teams will end up right there at 11, 12, 13 wins and be the class of the AFC. I think all the AFC West teams look really improved to me. I'm curious to see what the Chargers do with the defense likely to be healthy, and Taylor, keeping them off the field more often, by moving the chain. So I really like the Chargers this year. The Raiders, I think they'll get a boost from going to Vegas. And so, those teams in new stadiums probably be a factor, but you still got to ride Kansas City.
The Broncos, I'm not saying they're going to win the division, but they're an interesting team at 8-1 to win that division. And we'll get to some other odds in a second. I mean, right now, the Broncos are at 7.5 wins. They're over under on the season. And they obviously had quarterback issues last year, thinking Joe Flacco had something left in the tank. He had nothing left in the tank. They had some struggles at home early when Denver's got one of the best home field advantages in the NFL. They lost that close game to Chicago in week 2. They lost to Jacksonville at home early in the season. So that was a team that couldn't overcome a couple bad breaks at home and really shoddy quarterback play, but they think Drew Lock is the guy moving forward. They've upgraded their receivers as well. So they still have Von Miller defensively. I got to think Denver makes that move up. They had a really nice win at Houston last year. Again, they're not going to win the AFC West. I mean, the Chiefs, unless Mahomes is out for the whole season or for most of the season, that the Chiefs are winning that division. But the Broncos, and I understand what you're saying about the Chargers and the Raiders, that the Raiders, if Derek Carr can figure things out, they signed Mariota to be a backup quarterback, and then you have the Chargers who are still figuring out their quarterback. That's the problem with those three teams, that they're all just so unsettled at the quarterback position. But Denver is definitely a team that they still didn't have a great season last year, but they weren't 4-12. I think they could win maybe 8 or 9 games.
Yeah, we'll see. Locke went 4-1 as a starter, and seemed to have a nice rapport with Cortland Sutton, and they really upgraded at receiver as well. So we'll see. One of those teams, be it Vegas, the Chargers, or the Broncos, I think will join the Chiefs as one of the 7 playoff teams.
Now, looking at the AFC North and Baltimore, they are obviously in a tremendous position right now with the way that they finished the regular season, what Lamar Jackson did last year. But even for the Ravens, just out of the gate, it's not easy for them. They host Cleveland week 1, a team that beat them at home last year. They go to Houston week 2. They take on Kansas City week 3 at Washington, a short drive for them. That should be a layup. Cincinnati after that, at Philly, Pittsburgh at home. Then they go at the Colts, at New England, back-to-back after the bye. They have to go to Pittsburgh. I wouldn't say necessarily Baltimore, it will be a cakewalk in the AFC North. We'll learn a lot about them at least the first 2 months or so to see if Lamar Jackson can keep up what he did last season.
Well, one of the things that's interesting about the Ravens schedule, from weeks 3 to 9, they're not boarding a plane. I found that fascinating. They're at home for that Chiefs game. They're at home for most of those games within that 5-week stretch. And on the road, they go take a short drive up to Philadelphia, and they'll play Washington, which is in their backyard. So, it works out nicely for the Ravens to at least be in that general vicinity. And travel, I think, while you're in it, it plays a big factor, and certainly it'll be a huge boost to their hopes in December that they got such little mileage to travel to get to some of these games earlier in the season.
I don't know what to think of Pittsburgh right now. I really don't. And with Ben Roethlisberger coming back from that elbow injury, and they really don't have a lot of weapons offensively like they've had in the past. But for the Steelers, they're a team that, people are still going to think are going to be in the playoff hunt. When you look at Cleveland, new head coach, maybe now that they've gone through last summer and all the hype, and now it's kind of died down a little bit that no one's really talking about them. As long as Baker Mayfield doesn't make a lot of mistakes, that this Browns team has an opportunity to maybe be in the mix. Of course, we have one extra playoff spot this year, but Cleveland, their total is 8, so that's not crazy to get to, and they went through some bad stretches last year. Their offense did nothing at times. I mean, Cleveland was a 6-10 team last year. I got to believe that they can be around that 8-8, 9-7. And we had talked about on the show, I think last week, Tony, that after Baltimore week 1, you get the Bengals and Redskins at home. You get the Colts at home. I mean, you go to Dallas in between, and that's a winnable game. I mean, it can go either way. But Cleveland, if they can get off to a good start, that maybe they could be in that mix for a wild card too.
They should be, and they control their fate there at the end with a really manageable schedule. They play at the Jets and Giants, and then they close at home against the Steelers. So, you handle business in those games, you're probably one of those 7 teams in the AFC. I mean, if it's not going to happen this year, I think it's really all laid out for the Browns to finally get back into the postseason.
Now, looking at the other 2 divisions in the AFC East, everyone, is a little bit, or I guess I should say the jury's out on the Patriots at 5-4 odds to win the East, and Buffalo is right behind them at 29-20 odds as we speak, and these odds courtesy of DraftKings, to win the division, and the Dolphins and Jets each at 7-1. I'm just not buying into the Patriots without Brady. I can't do it. Are they still going to be good? Yes. I can't see them being a 12-win team. I can't see them being a 10-win team. I really don't. You can't just plug someone else in at this point and think they're going to be a great team, be an elite team, if it's Brian Hoyer or if it's Jared Stidham, unless Jared Stidham turns into, not a first-round pick. If he turns into a Russell Wilson or turns into someone like that who we just don't expect anything from. But the Patriots at Seattle, at Kansas City in the first 4 weeks. They get the 49ers at home. Still, Buffalo is not going to be easy. They're a much improved team. You go to LA for back-to-back games. You go to Houston. That this Patriots team, I'm just thinking they're going to be in that 8-9 win range. And it's not about buying into Buffalo necessarily, because you're still going to have Josh Allen deliver. But when you look at this division with the quarterbacks, I'm not putting Tua up there yet because he's not starting immediately. But when you have Stidham or Hoyer, Darnold, Allen, Fitzpatrick, how can you make a convincing argument really for any of these teams?
You mentioned it. The first 2 road games that Stidham would probably have to play would be a Sunday nighter in Seattle and then at Arrowhead a few weeks later. That's why I think, unless it's lights out, that he's going to be the starter. Would not shock me if week 1's starting quarterback for the Patriots is Hoyer. There's props available on that would pay you handsomely if you take that plunge. I just think Hoyer's experience is going to set him apart, especially since Stidham hasn't really done anything. So, to proclaim him the starter, even though you want him to grab that job and you want to instill him with confidence and telling him it's your gig to lose, I'll believe it when I see it if he starts out there week 1.
With Buffalo, they do have a tough schedule, but they get Kansas City at home on a Thursday night. They get Seattle at home. They get, obviously, the Patriots at home and away. But they don't really have difficult road games. That's what separates the Bills, I think, from the Patriots, that they go to Miami week 2. They go to Vegas week 4. They go to Tennessee week 5, and we'll talk about Tennessee in the AFC South in a second, and who knows what they'll be after their run to the AFC Championship last year. But at the Jets, at Arizona, at San Francisco, at Denver, at New England. So you throw out the 3 divisional games, which they play every year. All the rest of them, I mean, you can't say definitively that there are losses. I mean, it's not crazy to think Buffalo could win at San Francisco. So, for the Bills, if they could end up scratching out 9 or 10 wins, that could end up being enough to win the AFC East.
Right. I think the AFC East is won by a 9-7 record. I don't think any of these teams are 10-win teams, and the Bills' win total is 9 throughout most shops. Circa has 8.5. BetMGM has 8.5. New England is right in that mix as well. They opened at 10, but were faded early, obviously, with Brady no longer there. So they're right at 9. And I think that's what your AFC East champion is going to get, 9-7. And I wouldn't write off Miami, but we have to see whether it is Fitzpatrick over Tua and how early Tua takes the reins.
Yeah, and if I'm the Dolphins, I don't rush Tua out. I don't think there's any reason to rush him. You have him. You want to redshirt him. You want to say whatever you want. Put him on ice for a year, or see, I thought it was different last year with Josh Rosen. See what you have with him, and I don't think they gave him a fair shot. But with Tua, there's absolutely no reason to rush him unless Ryan Fitzpatrick is terrible or gets hurt. Yeah. But you see what happens with Fitzpatrick this year.
I love the over, though. 6 at most shops, 6.5 at some others. But you get in on over 6, I think they win 7 games easy.
And the Dolphins go to San Francisco. They get New England week 1, which, again, we don't know what the Patriots are. I know they won at New England week 17 last year. Doesn't mean much now. But as far as other road games, because that's, I mean, look, I kind of look at the road games first before the home games, just because to say, all right, which ones they don't really have a shot of winning. Now, as far as you don't feel good about, at San Francisco is going to be tough, but at Jacksonville's winnable, at Denver's winnable, at Arizona's winnable, at the Jets winnable, at the Raiders winnable, at Buffalo week 17, see what happens, and at New England week 1. And then the home games, you get Seattle, you get Kansas City, and you get New England. But then you get the Bengals, you get the Jets, you get the Chargers, the Rams, who we're not really sure what they are. And, if Jared Goff had his one-hit wonder season a few years ago, Todd Gurley's now gone to Atlanta. So, yes, the Dolphins, you could probably make an argument that they can get to 6 or 7 wins this season. But, again, the quarterback situation is right now up in the air. Now, the final division we'll look at today is the AFC South. And that one always is one that you can never just pick out a winner. It's very difficult. Now, I think we can all agree, you and I, Tony, that Jacksonville is probably not winning this division. They're 14-1 to win the AFC South, so we'll throw them out. You look at the other 3, the Colts at 7-5, Titans right now at 3-2, and the Texans at 7-2. My issue first with the Colts is I don't have that much confidence in how much Phillip Rivers has left in him. That's my issue with him. You have Marlon Mack. You have T.Y. Hilton. There are offensive weapons. They have a great offensive line. But Phillip Rivers, we saw at times last year, just bad decisions. And he had a great career. He's had a great career. But for some reason, I just don't know, even going to a new team for this year, if that's going to help him or he's just another year older.
Yeah, it's important that they get off to a good start because their back half of the schedule is loaded. And early on, they open at Jacksonville. They're already favored by more than a touchdown in that game, so that's a must-win. They host the Jets in week 3. They play at the Bears the following week. So if they cover as a favorite, they'd probably start 3-1, but it's going to hinge on Rivers getting off to a strong start because, that's a necessity. They play the Titans and Texans twice in that back half of the schedule. They play at Pittsburgh in week 16. That'll be a tough game probably with both teams in the playoff hunt. It's imperative that the Colts have to get off to a strong start. But I like Tennessee for the division. I think, Houston's going to drop off. We talked about Jacksonville probably bringing up the rear. I think Tennessee is going to be a 10-11 win team and win the AFC South rather handily.
Because looking at Tennessee's schedule, and obviously they made leaps and bounds with Ryan Tannehill as their quarterback, and we saw what kind of beast Derrick Henry is running the ball, and they pulled off 2 pretty good wins in the postseason at New England and at Baltimore, and they hung with the Chiefs for a little bit in the AFC Championship, but obviously outmatched in that game. And even early on for Tennessee, they do have 4 of their first 6 games at home, which includes Jacksonville. It includes Pittsburgh, Buffalo, and Houston, which they could win all 4 of them. They go to Denver week 1, the late night Monday night game. They go to Minnesota week 3, and the Vikings, they've made some changes, so we don't really know what they're going to bring to the table. But even so, that home schedule for Tennessee, they don't really have tough teams they're facing. When you look at Houston and Buffalo, those are the only 2 playoff teams from last year. You have Detroit, Cleveland, Indianapolis, Chicago. So you don't really have a tough schedule at home. But looking at the road, they go to Green Bay and Houston to close the season, which won't be easy. They go to Baltimore as well. So, yeah, Tennessee, you can definitely make the argument with their schedule that they should be a 10-win team.
Right. Their projected win total at most stops are 8.5. So, I'm definitely in on the over there. They do close with 5 of 7 on the road. So they'll have to really get off to a strong start, and hang in there. But that was a team that got better as the season progressed last season, and their ability to ride Derrick Henry in cold weather games in December, January should again come to fruition if he's healthy.
Now, finally, with Houston, the big question is you still have Deshaun Watson. They lose DeAndre Hopkins to Arizona, and everyone thinks Bill O'Brien's a clown for the way he's handled things. But for Houston, that schedule early on, throwing Jacksonville out in week 5, at Kansas City week 1, Super Bowl champ. Week 2, Baltimore at home, best record in the AFC. Week 3 at Pittsburgh, tough. Week 4, Minnesota, playoff team from last year. Week 6 at Tennessee, AFC Championship appearance last year. Week 7, Green Bay at home, NFC Championship appearance. That's all before the bye. So for Houston, this thing could get really ugly really fast, even though it eases up in the second half. I mean, it can't get any tougher. But that first 7-week stretch for Houston, you better hope that you don't start 2-5, because then it's donezo after that.
No, absolutely. And replacing Hopkins will be critical early. And, they've got Brandon Cooks in. They've got Randall Cobb in. They're hoping that Fuller can stay healthy and Kenny Stills will be back. So they've got personnel there to make it happen, but it's going to be on Watson early. That is a huge stretch to overcome when you're shifting pieces in and out, and we don't know what the early part of that season is going to look like.
Next week, we'll take a look at the NFC and eventually get to some college football as well as we roll through the end of May and into June, and hopefully we get some good news soon regarding Major League Baseball. Don't forget, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Play, Google Play, also on our YouTube channel at Vegas Insider on there, and you can find videos as well. And we'll have plenty of videos coming up over the next few weeks as far as previewing these divisions, and you'll see our faces. So it won't just be our voices. You can actually see us as well, and we are looking forward to that. For Tony Mejia, I am Kevin Rogers. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the podcast, and the Bet and Collect podcast will return again next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon right here on VegasInsider.com.